Hello! You've reached Biopicked, and this video will be a mix between the new and the old, as I spent a lot of 2021 watching what I consider to be timeless classics. If you woke up today thinking, oh my god, I need some movie recommendations, then first off, that's a wonderful problem to have, and secondly, I've got you covered, man. The following films plus one mini-series are things that I watched, loved, and enjoyed in 2021, but not necessarily things that came out in 2021. And although the majority of the list is full of amazing classics that I think you all should watch, my top 2 films were in fact 2021 releases, so stick around until the end of the video to find out what they are. Now, let's not waste any more time. Here are the top 10 things I watched last year. Coming in at number 10, we have When Harry Met Sally from 1989. I have a very special relationship with this rom-com, as it's one of the few films I tend to rewatch on a frequent basis. I've seen it many times over the past couple of years. I always watch it on New Year's Eve, and I literally never grow tired of it. When Harry Met Sally is directed by Rob Reiner, written by Nora Ephron, and stars actors Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan, Carrie Fisher, and Bruno Kirby. This, my friends, is a story of a relationship that stretches over 10 years. The premise is simple. We get to follow characters Harry and Sally as they learn to navigate a relationship as friends, with the constant will they, won't they hanging over our heads. When Harry Met Sally is a film that I think masters the balance between humor and romance. Not only is it funny and the most feel-good out of any of my favorite romantic comedies, but what When Harry Met Sally does so well is its use of dialogue to tell the love story between its 2 main characters. The film shows the chemistry between Harry and Sally, their flaws and their neuroses. It shows them becoming friends, arguing, bonding, and supporting each other, and it shows them realizing their love for each other all through conversation. These are conversations that feel witty, and they also hit very close to home. The filmmakers allow this relationship to develop over a longer stretch of time, which is a wonderful contrast to all the forced love stories in film and television that seem to happen almost instantaneously, or at least over the course of a very intense week. I recently, as a side note, finished watching the TV series Vikings, and in the 5th season, the character Björn got married not once, but twice, and we all know that even that wasn't enough, so shortly after in season 6, he got married again, and every time I was just sitting there like, oh, okay, I guess we're supposed to believe that you're in love now. Oh, okay, you took seriously 0 seconds to think about whether or not you wanted to get married. Go for it, dude. And it's precisely this factor alone that sells When Harry Met Sally to me. It feels real. I can relate to it. The only thing that is holding these characters back from fully loving each other are themselves and their own fears. What makes it or breaks it between them is not that they happen to live in different cities or that they are rivals fighting for the same bookshop space. One of them isn't a ghost or dying of some tragic illness. It all comes down to what makes us human, which is why this film is and will continue to be so groundbreaking for me. I have watched it almost every year since I was 16, and as I said, I never grow tired of it. It's the treat I choose to end each year with, so if you haven't seen it, what are you doing? Go watch it. So moving on to number 9 on this list with our first 2021 release. This is actually a mini-series, but it made the list anyway, just because I kept looking forward to it each week. And looking back at my year, it is easily one of the things that stand out to me as memorable, noteworthy, and I guess our favorite Dolph Mobius just took a piece of my heart with him when the show ended. Coming in at number 9, we have everyone's favorite MCU character in his very own show, Loki. I don't actually know if Loki's everyone's favorite character. I think there are a lot of good MCU characters, but you get what I'm saying. Created by Michael Waldron, this is an MCU miniseries made for Disney Plus, and in it we finally get to see what happens to Loki after he picks up the Tesseract and disappears in the Avengers Endgame. This series, of course, stars the ever so handsome Tom Hiddleston as Loki, but also introduces some new characters such as Mobius, played by my most watched actor of all time. That's true. Owen Wilson, and Sylvie, played by Sophia DiMartino. We also can't forget the amazing performances by Gugu Batara, Wunmi Musaku, Jonathan Majors, and the amazing characters Miss Minutes voiced by Tara Strong, and everyone's favorite, Croaky. This show was groundbreaking to me and what it meant and introduced to the MCU, playing with time and its relation to the multiverse. Loki also gives us a new fantastic villain to be scared of and inevitably attracted to. And if you're anything like me, you will walk out of this show wishing you will get to see the day when Mobius finally gets to ride a damn jet ski, and it will break your heart that this dream has not yet been realized. At least there's hope for season 2. I am looking at you, screenwriters. Please make it happen. This show is colorful, playful, massively entertaining, and will keep you on your toes. We further get to see Loki connect with more vulnerable aspects of himself as he tries to build friendships and relationships that aren't toxic. What really sold the show for me was the last couple of episodes, especially as we get to meet the villain, the mastermind behind this whole time variance thing. I know, yet again, this man was just sitting there talking, and I could have had just several episodes of that and been as content as a purring kitten. Maybe the conclusion of this is that I really just like a good conversation. Who knows? I can highly recommend Loki, especially if you're into the superhero stuff. At number 8 on this list, we have a film that surprised me. It had gotten quite mixed reviews when I sat down to watch it, and I was a little bit wary of the sci-fi vibe of the poster. Don't get me wrong, I like a good sci-fi. It's just one of those genres that struggles to impress me the most, I would say. But I couldn't have been more happily surprised by this film. At number 8, we have yet another 2021 release, Oxygen. Oxygen is a French film released for Netflix, directed by Alexandre Aya and written by Christy Leblanc. 99% of this film features the incredibly talented queen of my heart, and as you can hear, one of my favorite French actresses, Mélanie Laurent, in a close-up, as the character she portrays, Elizabeth Hansen, is stuck in a cryogenic chamber in space. She has for some reason woken up early just to notice that oxygen in the chamber is running out. Although it does feel like we've seen this concept before, I think that what made this film so good is Melanie's performance. Melanie does a lot with a very claustrophobic and minimal set. It's thrilling, believable, incredibly moving. I definitely enjoyed finding out who this woman was together with her as the protagonist, which naturally resulted in many exciting twists and turns along the way. I also thought that the film had just enough sci-fi elements to make me enjoy and be fascinated by this world that we had been introduced to, without deducting too much from the drama elements of the film, where we get to unravel the story of the woman, her life, and her struggles as she is realizing she might need to give it up soon. The stakes are high, and the next time you feel like you're in the mood for a sci-fi thriller, I highly recommend you reach for this. Next up, we have a film that came out in 2016. I knew before watching it that it was popular. I knew it got a lot of hype when it first came out, but I was just late to the train on this one. I guess that means that I would have been a zombie in this scenario. Number 7 on this list is, fittingly enough, Train to Busan from 2016. Train to Busan is a South Korean zombie movie directed by Sang Ho-yeon. The film stars that handsome guy who slaps people in Squid Game, Gong Yoo. Also, the man who plays Gilgamesh in Eternals. I knew I had seen him somewhere else. Ma Dong-sok, as well as Soo Kim as the little kid. So this film tells the story of a father who struggles to find time for his daughter, but promises to take her to visit her mother on her birthday. As they board the train that will take them from Seoul to Busan, what can only be considered the apocalypse begins, and most of the Earth's population turns into flesh-eating zombies. What we get are these characters fighting for their lives on a train, and boy, oh boy, you will not reach for your phone when you're watching this one. Now, did I expect to go into a zombie movie and come out heartbroken? No, but clearly I did, and I haven't been able to shut up about it ever since. The premise for Train to Busan is simple, and I like it that way. It takes a simple concept and does it well. The story is told in the most skillful way possible. The action is fantastic, the characters and their fight for survival It's just very believable, and despite the simplicity, the film still managed to surprise me. I did not expect to cry, but I did, and it gets all the kudos for that. What's so groundbreaking about Train to Busan for me is the fact that it took the zombie genre and somehow made it feel exciting and fresh. I will definitely watch this soon again, and man, you should too. Number 6 is a film I saw in theaters actually, but not because it was released in 2021, but because it's a classic that our independent cinemas like to feature. This classic could probably be considered one of the most heartbreaking love stories in film history. I don't know, that's probably just me being dramatic, but it's definitely a must-watch for anyone with a hint of romance running through their veins. The film I am talking about is In the Mood for Love from 2000. The film is directed and written by Wong Kar-wai, who is a Hong Kong filmmaker that just continues to impress me. I wrote an essay on his other film, Chungking Express, while I was in university because that's just so darn good, and I still have so many gems left of his on my watch list. In the Mood for Love also stars Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung. The film introduces us to these characters who become neighbors. They are both in unhappy marriages and are beginning to suspect that maybe their respective spouses might be cheating on them with each other. Over time, they form this strong bond with one another, but are determined to keep their relationship platonic as they are both committed to their current relationships. This film is both heartbreaking and also comforting in some way at the same time. I found a lot of beauty in exploring the moral dilemma of whether or not these characters would go on to do to their spouses what was so painfully inflicted upon them. I think that beauty is a great word to describe this film in general. The interactions between characters are beautiful, the dialogue is beautiful, and the cinematography that we get here is just chef's kiss. Intense red is by far one of my favorite colors, you can probably tell, and it can be found everywhere in this film. Mrs. Chan, played by Maggie Cheung, is also incredibly fashionable. I want to wear pretty much everything she's wearing in this, and if you know me, you know I like anything glamorous looking on my screen. This film is visually stunning, but also touches you deeply on an emotional level. This love story is handled delicately and poetically, which is precisely why you definitely need to watch it. Moving on to number 5, I have no idea how I went 29 years of my life completely overlooking this film, especially since I love a good gangster movie. A film noir set in the 50s but released in 1997. Next on the list is, of course, LA Confidential. If you're in the mood for a good crime film, then this true genre classic directed by Curtis Hanson, starring famous actor names such as Kevin Spacey, Russell Crowe, Guy Pearce, Kim Basinger, and Danny DeVito will be all you ever need. With Los Angeles of the 1950s as our shady and murky backdrop, this elaborate film noir-inspired film gives us a wonderful tale of police corruption and Hollywood dirtbags. LA Confidential tells the story of 3 very different cops who are all looking for the truth about the potential corruption within the police force. I really would love to discuss the plot more, but I feel this is a much better experience when you don't have any prior knowledge of what's going to go down. So for those of you who haven't seen it yet, I will leave it at that. You should have seen me after I finished this film. The pandemic has drained me of all excitement, and what once was a naive and happy woman has now turned into a cynic who doesn't expect anything from anyone. But after LA Confidential, my body experienced such a dopamine rush, I emerged out of my corona-induced melancholy and felt alive for the first time in ages. I just wanted to watch it again and again and again and again. This film had twists I couldn't have possibly imagined, and it's been a long time since I saw something that I wasn't able to predict the outcome of. That was really refreshing to me. You will get sleazy characters, grit, rain, bullets, great cinematography, a lot of excitement, and a killer script that really lets you discover the wonders of this police investigation alongside its main characters. The acting is also phenomenal, and of course, I went out of this whole experience wanting to revamp my wardrobe. LA Confidential is a true classic, so if you haven't seen it yet, it's time. Now, if you're into artsy cinema, if you like poetry, if you crave movies that are French and romantic, the number 4 on this list is bound to catch your attention. Next up, we have Hiroshima Mon Amour from 1959. This film, directed by Alain Resnais and starring Emmanuel Riva and Eiji Okada, has widely been considered as one of the most influential movies of the French New Wave movement. But for those of you who are now raising an eyebrow because you're one of those people who's into artsy stuff but is maybe not willing to stretch that far, don't let this scare you. I have watched a bunch of French New Wave films, and I'm gonna be completely honest, it's never really been my cup of tea. There are, of course, a handful of exceptions like Le Mépris by Jean-Luc Godard, but I went into this with a steel heart, preparing for the worst. I was preparing for 2 hours where I simply do not feel smart or French enough to get what was going on, yet I found that I definitely shouldn't have been worried. I fully and wholeheartedly loved this. In Hiroshima Mon Amour, we get to meet a French woman and a Japanese man who gets involved in a love affair with one another. The woman is an actress who has come to Japan to star in a movie about peace and the impact of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. The man, who works as an architect, sadly lost his family in the bombing, and together they discuss the war and disagree on pretty much everything. This is a story of tragedy, loss, destruction, the messiness and chaos of war, madness, and yes, it's also a love story at the same time. I felt deeply moved by the poetic and delicate screenplay. The dialogue going back and forth between the characters is beautiful, maybe even more so because it's in French. The film also uses film techniques that were unique to its time, like a non-linear storyline and miniature flashbacks, and in my opinion, it's not overdone here. I feel like in this movie, those aspects only accentuate the poetic tragedy and the message behind this film. I found myself unable to take my eyes off of the screen. I became totally engulfed in the conversation as the woman of the story finally decides to open up about her past life experience, how that was related to the war, and how that experience shaped her. In Hiroshima Mon Amour, we meet two people who are both scarred by what the war brought upon them, how these two characters approach a new relationship with this trauma in their lives ultimately becomes the most fascinating thing about this story. It is a beautiful, moving tale, and for sure, one of my favorite watches of last year. Merci beaucoup, Alain Resnais. The next one, number 3 on our top 10 list of 2021, is for all of you who like to spy on your neighbors. What would this mixed list of the old and the new be without a true Hitchcock classic? I present to you Rear Window from 1954. Ooh. Here we have what many consider to be Hitchcock's best movie and also one of the greatest films ever made. And wow, that's a real statement. And I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty darn good. Rear Window is an American mystery thriller starring James Stewart and the literal Princess Grace Kelly. Professional photographer L.B. Jeff Jeffries breaks his leg and due to his cast has been confined to his New York apartment. In lack of better things to do and in his restlessness, he spends his time observing his neighbors through the rear window of his apartment. After a mysterious night where one of his neighbors keeps going out and then coming back home, our main character begins to suspect that the man across his courtyard has in fact murdered his wife and is somehow trying to cover it up. With the help of his beautiful high society fashion consultant girlfriend played by Grace Kelly and his visiting nurse, he begins to investigate the case. I am personally a huge fan of Hitchcock's work. I still have many films of his yet to discover, but I just like how well they still hold up despite of their age. I am never bored with a Hitchcock movie, and in Rear Window, his technical and directorial skill set truly gets to shine. If you winced at Hiroshima Mon Amour and thought, screw poetic, I just want excitement, then maybe this is the classic for you. Hitchcock is, as always, a master voyeur, and I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoyed looking out of this man's window. The film does very much with a man who has such limited movement abilities. Grace Kelly is a true star in this, and I like that Hitchcock films give you suspense and thrills while at the same time keeping things a little glamorous. Some of Grace's outfits in this, come on. I feel like you probably can sense a theme from my favorite picks of the year. A lot of them have impeccable dialogue as well as vintage fashion. I am easy to please, give me a 50 silhouette, and there you have it. You have my 5 stars. A lot has been said about this beautiful masterpiece of a film. I also talked about it briefly in my What I Watched in December video, and I feel like others are probably able to articulate why this is great in a way that is more intellectual than I would be able to. I simply enjoyed it because it gave me the perfect amount of suspense, glamour, crime, and the pacing was just perfect. You get nothing more and nothing less than what you need here, and it is one of those films that will make your popcorn just taste a little bit better. Coming in at number 2 on this list, although it is not a film that is yet a classic, I believe that it definitely could be one in the future. I don't think that after the list that I just gave you thus far that this will come as a huge surprise to anyone, but I love Wes Anderson, so naturally number 2 on this list is The French Dispatch. This is Wes Anderson's latest film, and it was released in 2021. Now this is a star-packed movie. We've got great performances by Benicio del Toro, Adrian Brody, Tilda Swinton, Frances McDormand, Timothée Chalamet, Bill Murray, and yet again my favorite, Owen Wilson. He managed to sneak himself into 2 spots on the list. Wow. The French Dispatch is actually a compilation of stories coming together as one. Arthur Howitzer Jr. is an editor of a newspaper called The French Dispatch. He suddenly dies of a heart attack, and according to the wishes that he has expressed in his will, the publication of the newspaper is to be immediately suspended following one final farewell issue. 3 great articles from past editions are republished alongside an obituary, and it's these 3 stories we get to follow in this film. I think that this film is one of Wes's grandest. Literally every frame is a work of art, and I just want to rewatch this over and over again and just randomly hit pause every now and again just to study some of the beautiful cinematography. I feel like the framing is impeccable. This is witty and clever, and the various aspects of the film all come together to present you with an array of different art forms. I felt as if I was reading a newspaper, looking at a painted picture, listening to heartwarming poetry, smelling the amazing smells from the master chef. This film gave me not only cinema, but so much more. It's wacky, but also classy, and Wes managed to provide me with things I wasn't fully expecting. I guess that's on me, but it usually tends to be my critique of him that you get what you expect, and there was a lot of that, but I was also surprised by the sudden animation and the unfolding of these stories as they appeared to be different but also came together seamlessly. If you like Wes, this is going to be for you. I'm sure of it. And finally, I know you're dying to find out what the #1 movie I watched last year was, and maybe it will come as a surprise to some, but as the true musical nerd I happen to be, I couldn't wrap up my year without giving a standing ovation to the masterpiece that is Tick, Tick, Boom. Directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, based on the musical by Jonathan Larson, who also, as you may know, created Rent, this biographical musical drama starring Andrew Garfield, Alexandra Shipp, and Vanessa Hudgens will give you goosebumps and make you cry. There really is no escaping it. You might as well bring out a bucket of ice cream and grab a box of Kleenex before you press play. The synopsis I'm going to read from you now is taken straight from Netflix. The film follows Jonathan Larson himself, a young theater composer who's waiting tables at a New York City diner in 1990 while writing what he hopes to be the great next American musical. Days before he's due to showcase his work in a make-or-break performance, Jonathan is feeling the pressure from everywhere. From his girlfriend Susan, who dreams of an artistic life beyond New York City, from his friend Michael, who has moved on from his dream to a life of financial security amidst an artistic community being ravaged by the AIDS epidemic. With the clock ticking, Jonathan is at a crossroads and faces the question everyone must reckon with. What are we meant to do with the time that we have? Now, this is obviously self-biographical. Jonathan Larson later, as we know, went on to write the famous rock musical Rent, but he sadly passed away at a very young age, just a short time before he could see Rent come into fruition. This very fact alone makes us face the questions around what we are doing with our lives and what we should do with the time that we have on this earth. The reason why this is #1 on this list is because of very personal reasons. This film truly resonated with me. I just turned 30 myself, and I have been struggling with finding my place in the world. I have been considering giving up my dreams plenty of times, especially as the people around me seem to have accomplished more and gotten further ahead in life than I have. And obviously, social media doesn't help with that. I think this is an experience that people our age and our generation are dealing with a lot, and this film was just incredibly relatable. It also shows life in the midst of a raging AIDS epidemic, and you can definitely draw parallels from that to our current COVID situation, and the fact that all this is told through music. There really isn't a lot to prevent me from straight out sobbing while I watched this. I was deeply moved. Andrew Garfield gives an exceptional performance, the songs are great, and the most groundbreaking thing about this, for me, is that it was just such a highly relevant movie, and it was presented to me right at the appropriate time. If you are the kind of person who tends to err on the side of caution when it comes to musicals, then I still think that this could be a good movie for you. It is not, in my opinion, overly choreographed, and since it's about a musical composer, I felt that the musical numbers are more natural and easier to get behind narratively. Overall, this is a true gem, and you should all watch it. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. And that, my friends, were the end of this list. Did you see some of these movies? And if so, what did you think of them? Let me know in the comments down below. You can also support the Biopicked channel by liking this video. You could subscribe for future content and click the notification button. If, after all of this, you feel like, oh my god, I need more movie recommendations for some reason, I recently made a video on all the films I watched in December, so... Okay, guess we're hitting a microphone. So feel free to check it out. Goodbye, thank you for watching.